I don't know if there are any questions, we can start asking the panel. I'll ask.
I have a question to you. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but you were working on the cancer treatment.
Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned that the company picked up the project and they weren't interested in funding it. I understand you might not be willing to disclose too much detail about it, but I was wondering if you could elaborate on the whole concept of a company taking over and what it usually entails.
Yeah, so let me just give you a little background. When we had the MII, we were in the midst of actually the 9 months, and it turned out that the University of Maryland system had undergone an arrangement with MedImmune, which is an AstraZeneca subsidy, to have joint research programs. And so we submitted an application, which was not a very complicated application, using the MII project. And my thought was that, you know, why not? I'm always applying for money. I'm always looking for more money to run my research operation, as I think we all are, right? And then we were selected as one of the ones to get it. And then I was really confronted between, should I do this with MedImmune as a joint project, or should I do it as, try to set it up as an independent company? And I mean, what it seemed at the time was the MedImmune money was I could have it right away. And it's honestly seemed like the easier way to go. And I think part of that was also because I had never set up a company before and was really not involved. But in retrospect, I'm not sure that was the best decision to make.
So what did they want in return?
What did
they want in return?
When did they want to?
What did they
What
want?
rights does MedImmune have?
What advantages?
No,
what encumbrances?
contractually, what rights does?
Oh, well, that was one of the problems that's held me. I'm sorry. That was. I think you can answer that,
so
Wendy.
I'll address that real quickly. As part of a research project that a company sponsors, they're going to want some rights to anything that comes out of it. Also, if there's some underlying background research technology that is needed to practice anything new, they may ask for rights to that. Typically, we give them a right of first refusal. So if something comes out of it, we have to offer it to them first, for example. And that is what we gave MedImmune. There's some nuances to any industry-sponsored research agreement, but that's our first offer approach. Do you understand what right of first refusal is? Okay.
We had filed a patent application before it went to MedImmune. So I think we had some protection,
Yes, we have
Wendy,
background technology.
on aspects of it.
Correct. The MedImmune project is out of the, what are they calling the one they did with UMB? Was it, I can't remember. It's a master research agreement.
Yeah.
So some projects were funded, Sue's was Friedman bragged, so I'm going to brag, the highest rated proposal that was submitted, but there were UMB projects that were submitted as well, and a number of those.
There were 5 projects that were funded out of that, 3 at UMB, 1 at College Park, and one here.
Right.
So these are acts, not private. These are $600,000 grants. So it's actually a substantial amount of money coming into this. And in order to qualify for MII, there has to be some intellectual property that is licensable to a company. In this case, probably that particular piece will probably be licensed to MedImmune.
Now, that was my question. It's a research agreement, not necessarily about license yet, but okay.
Yeah, it's encumbered. We can't do anything else with it while she's still doing the project.
And that's for 1 year.
That's a 3-year project,
3 years.
I believe.
Yeah, so you're not really, I mean, that was part of my quandary, right? Do I do that? But, you know, again, faced with the reality of getting the money sooner and actually a guarantee of getting money, whereas if you're going to set up your own company, you don't know what's going to happen. So I think you have to balance all of those things.
And another part of it was, in the process of doing the MII, they had a better idea. And so they've actually licensed or working on the less good idea. It's still a good idea, it's really, but the new idea is the one that moved on to the tech commercials or CADs.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I think that's for me, that was a real strength of the MII. It wasn't just, I mean, the money was wonderful, right? And the learning process of going through everything that everybody's explained here was wonderful, but it was also the networking and the contacts that I was able to come up with, which led to other things. It's really, I think, been very beneficial. Just going through the process. That's a real educational process.
If I could just echo that.
Yeah.
It was my first experience of, I mean, people always say money talks, but it was my first experience of that because we don't get much money in the arts. You know, just getting the MII grant, suddenly people take you a little bit more seriously, right? Because, you know, you now have received this backing. And so it opened doors for us.
That's actually really true. I mean, I got after I got the MII, I got phone calls from small companies and from VCs who were interested. And, you know, it was amazing. I mean, that's never happened. I don't know about people in other areas, but in my area, that just doesn't happen. You don't get call from people who want to invest in your research.
It did happen with me also.
Yeah.
Because usually if it's been us going out there to find people to fund us. Once we got this one, then 2 companies, actually 3 companies came and talked to me. And I tried more or less, you know, to play it like cool and say, okay, listen, you know, what is in it for us rather than me begging for money. So things now are a little bit different.
Yes, the first phase is said to be a technology validation or a proof of concept. How far do you need to be? You have to have a completed device, a completed program, or completed at the end of that phase, or do you have to have something ahead of time already done, and then submit it as a proposal? Or how far do you need to be along the lines of your device or product?
I'll start with this one on this project that we have been working on. When we applied, we had something minor, and we had done some experiments, but they were kind of disconnected, and we did not have the technology fully developed. So with the MII fund, we were able to continue and make a prototype. So now it is a full-fledged prototype. It is not commercially viable yet because we have nobody for support. It is a student product, but it is as far as you can go having students writing programs on the technology field. What will it take to make this a product in a company? Full-time personnel to be on it all the time. Just like any technology company that they have a software behind that they support all the time. So it does not have to be the actual thing that you will be selling, but it has to be pretty close, and it should cover the basics.
Can I say something here? I mean, in our case, we had, this also grew out of another project, and we had in vitro data. We had no animal data, and that was part of the MII program. As George said, the application, it's 4 pages, Dave, or 3?
5.
5 pages. I think one of those pages is the project, and the rest of it is the commercialization, the market, and so forth. So to me, it's really, you have to have some kind of nugget of data showing that it's going to go someplace, but you don't have to show that this is absolutely going to work. I don't think that's what this program is about. It's about, you know, you have an idea, you've done some work on it, that idea looks like it's going to go someplace, but it actually may not have gotten there yet.
Yeah, for our part, we didn't know that we could actually embed organisms in those pellets. We knew we could spray them on, they worked, but we didn't know if this was actually going to work until we tried it. We never tried to compress the pellets with the organisms in it, so it was a new process, hadn't been tested yet.
I think for projects in the arts and humanities, the bar is probably a little higher. I don't know if any of you are there, because you know, we had to. People don't really believe there's a market in the arts and humanities to begin with. So unlike my colleagues, where there's, I think, more obviously a market, we did 3 years of testing of the actual. So we had a prototype. So when we went in for the MII, so we had done testing, but not extensive. I mean, we had little bits of money from internal funds for 3 years. So we tested it for 3 years before we were successful with the MII.
Then a follow on that, you need to have the process set up that you can complete something by 9 months, have something done. Ready.
Shaking your head, yeah.
Realize the schedule then.
There's a theme here, isn't there? That's why we talk about milestones, because it's a different way. There are, and it's actually beyond this, because the milestones have to be quantifiable.
Yeah.
You have to know when you actually reach a milestone. Okay, so that's part of the process of writing the application is a learning process. And it's not surprising that they get rejected because sometimes they don't have quite enough information. I can say from the review process, the reviewers are actually pretty good at picking up this thing, and the review process, you can tell the variety of things that might come in the door. The reviewers are actually pretty good at doing this process. So it's a learning experience, but it also focuses you very much. Typically, when I get an application, the first draft of an application will be 10 pages of the technology. Okay. So my first thing is I take all of that out, cut it all out, and come up with 1 page, and then get back and say, let's write the rest of the proposal.
Can I follow up on this? Timing is a pretty drastic way of looking at the MII process because it is 9 months. You have to time when you're going to make the application. Because once it is signed by MII, time starts right there.
Yeah.
And if you do not have students to work on it, or if it is in the middle of the semester, then what are you going to do? So if it is summertime, do you have students? So you have to time it in a way that it will be aligned with the MII within these 9 months. And at the university, we have beginning of the semester, and then do you know if you're going to get it? It's going to be ready by then. It's going to. So all of those things you have to take into consideration. In my case, the project was approved in early May. So I use the summer, and I hire students for summer to do the work and fall. So basically that was it. I knew that I had summer and fall to do it. And then of course it's going to end in February, but you cannot really tell students you will be starting, like you will work only 3 days because classes start January 26. So you have to take all those things into consideration and make your milestones in a way that will finish by, let's say, mid of December or early. And always there's some student who's going to say, well, okay, well, I did that, but now I have to take some vacation. I'll be back in January. And so there are always those things that flow a little bit slower towards the end of the project. But it is workable if you have a good plan.
It's not,
That's I think one of the most challenging pieces is the 9-month window. I mean, we applied for the 3rd time, so our grant, we had applied hoping it was going to be the summer, and it didn't happen. So then we applied the 3rd time, and the money started August 1. Well, you can imagine, there are no students available August 1 to start anything. So this was very, very challenging piece of it. So, we had a month to kind of ramp up and try to find people. But it's achieving certain of the milestones was more challenging when you're relying on students. For the professionals, this was fine, not a big deal. But
Yeah, for our part, we already had someone in place and waiting because it was the only way we were going to do it. Plus, we had to develop new assays because normally we would do our tests over the course of maybe 90 days, and we didn't have that luxury. So we had to develop new assays so that we could get as many tests done for viability in the shortest period of time. And we succeeded, but it was a lot of pressure. So we had to develop the tests and roll out all the results in that period. And, it worked.
it's not like a grant in that, you write a grant and you have your aims and you may do some and you may not do others, right? This isn't like that. They want you to do exactly what you say in your milestones. There's a midterm review where you go to TEDCO offices and actually, at least when I did it, when you present you present what you've done. And the key question for them is, so when are you going to be done? Are you on time with your milestone? So I was a month behind on the milestone at my midterm review, and they were very concerned about that. And even though I said things like, well, we're giving mice tumors, it takes a while for that to grow, I can't control it. It doesn't really matter. They want to see it done within the 9 months. So you have to be very careful when you're writing your milestones that they're realistic, and I think that's one of the things that Dave is saying when the reviewers look at it. Is this a realistic milestone? It can't be, you can't promise pie in the sky. You got to promise something really realistic.
Why did you let ice stop you? There's a drill, you can drill holes and put your stuff through the hole.
Oh, we could break the ice, but the problem is we had to drop a pump in to mix. It was a big caisson. We had to mix it, and the ice would interfere with the pump.
Drop this into a river and
And
let it settle.
this is, you can, but this was an exception. And I won't go into all the details, but this is in a sewage treatment pond that had sludge in the bottom. That the stuff wouldn't go in because the sludge was like peanut butter. So in this case, we had to mix it in, and we dropped the pump in, and the pump immediately froze. So it wasn't happening.
So there are some elements of discovery.
So are these milestones then something that you guys come up on your own, or is that something that you work with the university on in terms of writing the proposal?
We worked with Dave
Yeah.
to come up with
They
realistic
have to
milestones.
agree to them. They have to set the milestones. We can't set what the milestones are.
We set the milestones, but then there could be also some updates to the milestones. So that it will be, the thing is, first of all, what is doable, how do you measure it, and what is the time frame. And all those things for every milestone they have to be realistic.
I think also, for me, there was a learning curve even in what is a milestone? I didn't even know what that was. And so, to understand what actually what it would be was a learning curve for me. So.
The other thing is not on milestones, but the other sort of TEDCO issue is when you submit your budget, you have to follow that budget. If you, for example, I used some of the funds, it turned out that the supply costs were much higher than I anticipated. So I used some of the personnel support to cover supplies because I had students to do the personnel fund. So at the end of the time when we filed our final budget, TEDCO did not like this at all. I should have requested permission ahead of time to rebudget it. But again, I'm used to working with grants, and in a grant, you just get the pot of money and you spend it the way you spend it. There's really no restriction. But that's turned out to be actually pretty offensive to TEDCO that I hadn't requested permission ahead of time.
Other questions?
Yeah, I think it's, what is it, the percentage is like 10%?
10, plus or minus 10.
Plus or minus 10%, you have to request permission.
So if you do it ahead of time, you're fine, or in theory, as long as it's reasonable, it's
Yeah.
fine.
And that must have-
It's the whole doing it on the back end. So again, it's just different than what was supposed to
In a way, that's one of the things that comes up in the midterm review also, is does the budget still work?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Artie will be doing, so she'll be out right after you get the congratulations, you've got the award, and be having some of those conversations, so it's not a surprise at the midterm. Those conversations.
I think would be helpful would be, for those of us who are not savvy in those things, would be maybe to sit down with somebody when the award is made and the conditions of the, maybe even a meeting and the conditions are really explained. It's not that we're trying to be, evasive, it's that we just.
Do a different set of rules.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
And there are no extensions.
There are no extensions,
No
right?
extensions.
Right.
So that's another thing.
I don't even
Park
need to
just
give my
said to me,
presentation, by the way. You have to cover the entire thing. It's fabulous. I don't have any slides that don't cover
So
it.
I'd like to thank the panelists. I think it's time to move on. We're going to take a short break. Thank you all.